The observation deck of the Celestial Harmony hummed with its usual nocturnal rhythm, a soft pulse of machinery that had become white noise to Leora Dane over the past 6 months. She sat cross-legged on her bunk, wrapped in the thermal blanket her sister had given her before launch, worn soft from use, still smelling faintly of Earth's lavender fields. The diplomatic mission to the Vraxian homeworld had been grueling, filled with tense negotiations and cultural misunderstandings that could have ignited an interstellar incident. But tonight, finally, there was peace. Leora's quarters were modest, barely larger than a storage closet, but she'd made them home. Photographs lined one wall. Her family's farm, her sister's wedding, her nephew's first steps. The Vraxians aboard had found this peculiar displaying images of absent loved ones. Their species didn't form such attachments. They were apex predators, cold-blooded in both physiology and temperament. Raised in communal nests, where only the strongest survived to adolescence. A scratching sound interrupted her thoughts. Leora froze, listening. There it was again, soft, deliberate, coming from the ventilation shaft near the ceiling. She'd heard stories about the Vraxian young aboard the ship, 4 cubs, offspring of Ambassador Korath, kept in the lower deck's environmental chambers. The crew had been warned to keep distance. Vraxian cubs, though small, possessed razor-sharp claws and instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution. They were, in every sense, predators. The grate popped open with a metallic clink. 2 glowing eyes peered down at her vertical pupils, contracting in the dim light. The creature was no larger than a house cat, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to black. Its head was triangular, crowned with small horns that would grow deadly in adulthood. This was Civi. She realized. She'd seen the cub once before, clinging to its parent's back during a formal dinner. "Hey there," Leora whispered, keeping her voice soft. Civi's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. The cub's body language screamed fear back-arched. Tail wrapped tight around its own legs. It trembled. Slowly, Leora lifted the edge of her blanket, creating a small opening. "It's okay. You're safe here." The cub hesitated, ancient instinct warring with desperation. Then, in a fluid motion, Civi dropped from the vent and scrambled across the floor, diving beneath the blanket. The small body pressed against Leora's side, scales surprisingly warm, vibrating with a sound somewhere between a purr and a rattle. Leora smiled and gently lowered the blanket. "There you go." She'd barely settled when more scratching echoed from the vent. One by one, 3 more cubs emerged, siblings drawn by Civi's courage, or perhaps by scent. They tumbled down, clumsy in their panic, and burrowed into the blanket cocoon. Soon, Leora found herself surrounded by 4 juvenile predators, each no bigger than her forearm, each capable of tearing through reinforced plastic with their claws. She should have called security. Protocol demanded it. These weren't domesticated animals. They were Vraxians, a species that had conquered 12 star systems through sheer ferocity. Ambassador Korath would be furious to discover his offspring had breached containment and sought refuge with a human. But Leora felt the trembling of small bodies against her own. She heard their rapid breathing, saw the way they pressed close to each other, and to her. Fear transcended species, and so did the need for comfort. "What are you running from?" she murmured, running a gentle hand over Civi's scaled head. The cub leaned into the touch, its rattling purr deepening. Through the thin walls, Leora heard it raised voices in the Vraxian language, harsh and clicking. Ambassador Korath, arguing with someone. The tone was unmistakable even across the language barrier. Anger, disappointment, threat. The cubs pressed closer, and Leora understood. In Vraxian culture, weakness was culled. Cubs that showed fear, that failed dominance trials, were abandoned or worse. These 4 had fled not from physical danger but from the judgment of their own kind. They'd crawled through ventilation shafts, navigating a massive starship, driven by instinct to find somewhere someone who might not reject them. They'd found the human. Leora adjusted the blanket, ensuring each cub was covered, warm, hidden. "You can stay," she told them. "Stay as long as you need." She knew what the dawn would bring. Korath would discover his cubs missing. There would be searches, accusations, diplomatic complications. Leora's career could end before breakfast, but as Civi's small clawed hand gripped her finger, as 4 pairs of luminous eyes gazed up at her with something approaching trust, she found she didn't care. Humans had always been the galaxy's enigma, not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most logical, but they possessed something the other species struggled to understand, a capacity for compassion that defied survival logic. They formed bonds across species barriers. They protected the weak, even when weakness was deemed a flaw. They looked at creatures designed by evolution to kill, saw past the claws and scales, and recognized children in need of comfort. The cubs' trembling slowly ceased. Their breathing evened out. One by one, they drifted into sleep, secure in their blanket fortress, warmed by the strange mammalian heat of the human who'd offered sanctuary without hesitation. Leora leaned back against the wall, careful not to disturb her guests. She wouldn't sleep tonight, couldn't risk the cubs waking alone and afraid, so she kept vigil, one hand resting protectively over the blanket's lumps and bumps, feeling the steady pulse of 4 small hearts beating in rhythm with her own. Outside, the stars wheeled past the viewport in their eternal dance. The celestial harmony sailed through the void, carrying diplomats and warriors, predators and prey, all bound together in the fragile experiment of interstellar cooperation. And in one small quarters, a human demonstrated what her species did best. She chose kindness over protocol, compassion over caution, love over fear. When morning came, Ambassador Koreth would find his cubs curled in Leora Dane's blanket. He would see them sleeping, peacefully, see the human watching over them with fierce protective instinct. And perhaps, just perhaps, he would begin to understand why humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through strength of arms, but through strength of heart. Until then, Leora smiled and let them remain.